Dear brothers and sisters, our parents take all of the worries for us, and we grow up with things that are given to us. You know, our parents provide for us. They take care of our food and the place where we sleep, and take us out and do all of those things for us. And as we go into adult life, as we start having our families of our own, then we start dealing with those problems. Then we start being put through those trials and those hardships that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts upon us. So that's where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts the levels of difficulty upon each one of us. In Surah Al-Kahf verses 7 as well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّا جَعَلْنَا مَا عَلَى الْأَرْضِ زِينَةً لَهَا لِنَبْلُوَهُمْ أَيُّهُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. That all the pleasures of this life we have put upon mankind, we have introduced to mankind, so we can distinguish who's better than the others, right? We all are put through these trials, we all are put through these temptations, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can test us. In Surah Al-Baqarah verses 155, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also reiterate this point by saying وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that He's going to inflict some fear, some hunger, some lack of wealth, and souls, and some sustenance. And then right at the end of this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ, give glad tidings for those who are patient, for those who pull through these hardships. And a lot of times we think that these hardships are because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to elevate us, which is true. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala picks on His righteous servants so He can elevate them and so He can test us. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَحَسِبَ النَّاسُ أَن يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا وَهُمْ لَا يَفْتَنُونَ. Do people think that they're going to say we believe and not be tested? But also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as He said in Surah Al-An'am verses 42, وَلَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا إِلَىٰ أُمَمٍ مِّن قَبْلِكَ فَأَخَذْنَاهُمْ بِالْبَأْسَاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَضَرَّعُونَ. That, O Muhammad, we have sent to people, to nations before you these trials so we can get them closer to us. So we can ask them, so we can push them into seeking forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these trials, these hardships can be a sign that we are pulling away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A sign that we are getting close to loving the pleasures of this dunya and slowly drifting away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So He sends us those reminders, and some reminders are harder than others. Those trials that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts on people may be more difficult than others. And Yunus alayhi salam, when he gave up on his people and left his people without the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pull him back? He sent him this trial when he went on that ship, and the storm came and he ended up being in the water, and the whale or that big fish swallowed him. So what did Yunus alayhi salam say from that point on? He kept doing istighfar and tasbih and trying to get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because he realized at that point he distanced himself from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what we do. As we were growing up, we tend to have this feeling that we're good enough, we don't really need our parents, so we start drifting away from the connection with our parents. And a lot of times the first sign of hardship, the first time of trouble, the first people that we call is usually our parents. We're trying to get back close to them. We realize that we have done something wrong. Where are my parents for help? And this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to get us closer to Him. This is where we go through these hardships and we try to get closer to Him. Or maybe it's because something we've done. In Surah Ash-Shura verses 30, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا أَصَابَكُم مِّن مُّصِيبَةٍ فَبِمَا كَسَبَتْ أَيْدِيكُمْ وَيَعْفُو عَن كَثِيرٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that some of these hardships some of those bad things that are happening to us are because of something that we have done. And he concludes that ayah, that very short ayah, by saying, وَيَعْفُ عَنْ كَثِيرٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives those people. So again, this may be another sign that we're doing something wrong. Sign that we have committed a sin, or we're continuously committing a sin, but we just don't know how to get back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We want that forgiveness. We want to go back on that straight path, and we don't know. And this is where we reach back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we know the hadith when the Prophet ﷺ says that, you know, any believer that's hit or that's, you know, received the smallest pain, and they accept it and they're patient with it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive some of their sins. So the harder the hardship and the more patient you are, the more the reward, the more the forgiveness that you're going to get. And as we know, as being adults, that life is full of hardships. I don't think anybody in this masjid is not either currently going through a hardship or had just finished going through a hardship. We all go through it. Think about your life. Think about your life for the past few years. And think about how many hardships Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put you through. And think about the levels of those hardships. Some hardships will last a few hours. You know, some hardship will last few days, few months, and they may even last few years. So this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you signs. This is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you hints. Think for the future. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the Prophet ﷺ tells us in the example of the person with the weakest iman, the person with the least amount of iman that had the smallest amount of iman in their heart. The last person to leave the hellfire and go into paradise, he says once he leaves it and gets closer to paradise, he thinks that this is it. He thinks that he's the best of all of them, and he forgets all about the hardships. He forgets all about the pain and the suffering that he's been through. So we have to look at those hardships as a way for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to purify us. And a way for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to get us closer to Him. Or a way for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us a wake-up call. So once you realize that this is a hardship coming your way, no matter what that hardship is, start by doing istighfar. We have to continuously ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness. Because this is where we get our hearts closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as Yunus alayhi salam did when he got angry with his people and got up and left. So this is another sign that anger may be the cause to our hardships, a cause to our problems. And you can't fix those things overnight. We can't, clear anger out of our hearts just by simply saying, I want to get rid of it. Or by saying, I'm not going to get angry anymore. This part takes meditation. We really have to look into how do I get rid of being an angry person or getting angry at every single thing. Sometimes it could be just as simple as making wudu and just praying 2 rak'ahs, or simply walking away, just stepping away from the problem, stepping away from what's causing that problem. Whether that's a fight with your spouse, with your parent, with your children, with your friends, with your coworkers, and that's not a sign of weakness. On the contrary, that's a sign of strength, because you're able to control the situation. You're able to control those problems. You're preventing certain hardships from happening. And sometimes, we have to continuously follow our hearts with patience. We have to continuously think that there is a way out. And the perfect example for this is the story of Yusuf alayhi salam and his father. His father had his child taken away, had his son taken away at a young age. And he lost him, but he never lost hope. His kid was gone for years, for many years, but he still had hope because he had faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فإن الله لا يضيع أجر المحسنين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not let go of those who do good with Him. In Surah Al-Ma'arij verses 5, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَاصْبِرْ صَبْرًا جَمِيلًا. Have this beautiful patience. Ayyub alayhi salam was so patient with the trials that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put him through. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took his wealth, took his children, and took his health, and took his status among his community members. He was an outcast. But he was still very patient with those hardships. Imagine losing a son or losing your daughter. Imagine how hard that would be. Imagine losing your job. Imagine losing all of your wealth. Imagine being sick for days on days and for years, but never losing hope. This is where we really have to be strong to pull through those hardships. If you think your hardships are bad, think again. Because I guarantee you, there are plenty of people in this masjid that probably have it much worse than you are. But we just don't know. We think our hardship is the worst. Some of the stories that we hear in our communities here in Cincinnati would make our hardships seem like it's very simple problem. Makes it seem like it's a walk in the park. And you would never give it up. You hear some of the hardships that people have, and you say, Alhamdulillah, I'm good with my hardships. I'll stay with my hardships. I don't want to deal with any of the hardships. And this is the beauty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What He gives us is something that we can handle. He does not put a hardship upon us where it's something that we cannot deal with. Dear brothers and sisters, when we think about those hardships, when we think about the problems and the trials that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts upon us, we have to think about why. And not the why as in why are you putting me through this, but why did this happen to me so I know which route to take. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we said, could be putting this hardship upon me to purify my sins. Because it's something that I'm doing wrong. And you don't need a sheikh, you don't need an imam, you don't need anybody to really tell you why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is putting you through this hardship. We know. We know what we're doing. We know what we're doing right, and we know what we're doing wrong. Think about the situation that you're in, and think about your life in general. The companions, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with them, if they went through some extended periods of time without being put through hardships, they would worry. Because they knew that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested His righteous people as well. So they would worry that, what are we doing wrong? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want to test us in this life and purify us on this dunya. And if that's the situation that you're in, then that's great. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is putting you through hardships to purify you, to elevate you to a higher level. If you're doing something wrong, if you're committing a sin and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing you or putting you through hardship, know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to get you closer to Him. So think about how can you pull away from that sin or pull away from doing whatever it is that you're doing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could be trying to purify your money. You're not giving away your zakah. People are coming to you for help and you're not helping them. There is a point and there is a reason after or with every single hardship that we go through. Every single hardship that we're going through in our lives, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a purpose behind it. And our role is to be patient with it and trying to figure out why. Not why to question Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but why so we know how to deal with it. And when you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help during this hardship, don't ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take this hardship away, no. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase your patience so you can pull through this hardship. So you can continuously get that purification. So you can continuously try to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Inna ma'al usri yusra," with every hardship there is ease. So we know the ease is coming. We know the hardship is going to go away. It's a matter of how do I pull through it. We know we have to go to the dentist. We know we have to get our teeth fixed or, get our cavities fixed. It's a matter of, do I go in, get it over with and move on? Or do I make a big deal about it? And this is where we really have to start purifying our hearts. This is where we really have to start getting our hearts closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And start by asking the forgiveness. Start by istighfar. And that's the simplest of terms. That's the simplest of things that we can do. When we're driving, when we're sitting down, when we're doing nothing, when we're just have this free moment. Continuously do istighfar so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can get us closer to Him.